Welcome, everyone. You found Sanctuary's Coffee and Conversation Show. I'm Myrna Haskell, executive editor of Sanctuary Magazine. This is an online publication for women that empowers and inspires with a focus on the arts, philanthropy, health and wellness, travel, culture, and community. You can find us at sanctuary-magazine.com. This morning, my guest is Maya Golden. She is an award-winning multimedia journalist. She is the author of The Return Trip, a memoir, and she's also the founder of the 1 in 3 Foundation. Maya, I'm so happy to have you as a guest this morning. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity.
So, folks, this is, a very serious topic we're talking about because we're talking about childhood sexual trauma and the journey one takes to try to heal from an extreme trauma like that. But some of what we'll discuss also pertains to other traumas people might have, such as PTSD from, being at war or, having other physical abuse and other things that they've experienced, or even the journey through addiction, that can kind of apply here. So we're talking about a serious subject, but before we dig in, Maya, I want to say that probably a few of our listeners recognize you because we had The Return Trip excerpted in the fall of last year. Maya's book is truly inspirational, and I wanted to thank her here online for being one of the authors that supported our book giveaway. I know that's really popular with our readers at the end of each year, so thank you for that, Maya.
Thank you for the
Um,
chance.
I'm hoping to start out by giving you a chance to talk a little bit about your backstory. And through talking about that, perhaps let us know, because we know that when you're dealing with trauma, it's a true journey. There's a lot of twists and turns, right? Ups and downs, and you're struggling so much inside, but you're trying to keep everything together. So as part of talking about your backstory, I was hoping you'd say something about maybe there was a defining moment when you realized, I can't hold it together anymore. I look like everything's okay. I'm, an amazing businesswoman. I'm a mother, I'm holding everything together, but it's unraveling. So I'm just going to let you have the floor now and let our listeners know.
I think that's exactly was the point where I realized that I had so many spinning plates in the air. As you mentioned, being a wife, a mother, running a business, having a career, and also having a forward-facing career. Those things all sort of presented itself in a way of wearing a mask because you're supposed to have this energy and you're supposed to not get down and you're supposed to stay positive and you're supposed to look a certain type of way. And there's pressure from all sides. And I felt like after years of not only dealing with those pressures, but then suppressing my history with mental health, my history of childhood sexual abuse, the trauma that comes from that, and then the resulting addiction that was a coping mechanism, it was just overwhelming. And it was truly when I entered motherhood that it became the catalyst for me to realize that I wasn't okay. Part of it was having a newborn, and I had, being the perfectionist that I am, had this mentality that I was going to be this exceptional mother. My kid was never going to want for anything or cry or ever have any need unmet. And then I met a newborn and had a newborn of my own and realized sometimes it's not about how much you do. Sometimes it's not about, being the perfect mom, which whatever the definition of that is, those things are out of our control. And when I started to realize that I didn't have a grasp on those things, my life started to unravel and those plates started to fall and I couldn't handle it. And so it was really, I hit this rock bottom of all of those things starting to collide and my mental health was waning and I didn't feel any sense of hope. And because of that, I will be honest and say that I had suicidal ideologies. And it went beyond that. At one point, I had a suicide plan. But because also of those things, because I was a mother and a wife, and I knew that there were people who did love me, I was able to be pulled back from that. But what I had to realize was that I needed to get better for myself, not for them, which is what I had been doing my whole life, being better, doing better for everyone else. I needed to be okay with who I was. And once I accepted that and realized that I needed to go into treatment for myself, I was already talking to a counselor, but I needed something a little bit more in depth than just cognitive talk therapy. I really needed to work through the trauma. That's when I started to see the change in my life and started to be able to live more authentically and not just presenting a version of myself to the world.
You know, I heard you say that you had to start thinking about taking care of yourself. And I can tell you that that's a topic that comes up again and again in our community at Sanctuary. You know, women are the caregivers, right? We want to be able to do it all, right? This, you know, since the 1970s, when women really plunged into the workforce, not that there weren't those who had careers before then, but that's when a really large percentage of women, and but then they still felt like they had to take care of everyone. And then some, you might have elderly parents you're also taking care of. And we always are telling ourselves, you know, I can do it, I can do it all, I can hold it together. If I don't take care of these people, who's going to take care of them? But when we're depleted, and especially depleted from an abusive situation that you grew up with as a child, we can't take care of other people, right? I mean, we don't have the resources and the energy and the wherewithal to do that, even though we're trying so desperately to do it, right?
Right.
So I can't, you know, I have to pat you on the back because I don't even understand how you held it all together for as long as you did. I know that you were up for an Emmy Award at one point. I mean, what the public was looking at was the perfect woman, you know, this successful, beautiful businesswoman, mother, you know, she's got it all together. Probably parts of the audience were thinking, why can't I do that? You know, and what, you know, what this comes down to is we really don't know what people are struggling with inside. And so when you're that person struggling, right, you have to find a way to repair yourself before you can give to others. That must have been terrifying for you as a mom, because I'm a mom of two. And, you know, motherhood pressures are really like nothing else, right? We have to raise these human beings to be good citizens. And it's so difficult. And there are some rule books about it out there, but I mean, it's so hard, right? You're flying by the seat of your pants half the time. And now you were dealing with this. So I have to believe that that builds up for you had to be astronomical.
It
Had to
was.
be, right?
I would think that all of that was basically in the book. I likened it to, you know, when I was a kid, I started having secrets and I would put those secrets away and file them away like in a suitcase and just latch that suitcase up, zip it, slide it to the side. And then I would have another suitcase and do the same thing, latch it. Well, eventually that became a warehouse of all these secrets that were latched up and it was overflowing. And it was almost like the door just wouldn't close anymore, that
Yeah.
there was no more space. You know, if you cook dinner ever or cook, then you know that pots boil over. It's the same thing. You put too much water in it, too much pressure, too much heat on it. Eventually that pot is going to boil over. The lid's going to
Yeah.
pop off and it's going to spill out. And that's exactly what happened with life. It was just a culmination of so many things that I had been able to sort of press down and keep creating all these layers. And eventually it was like an accordion. Eventually it was all pushed together and it had to spring back out. And once that happened, I started to really question, what was I doing? What made me happy? Who was I? You know, I had lived my life for so many other people, and I had all these identities. As you said, I was the journalist, I was the mom, I was the, you know, the head of a nonprofit, all these different things. But I, at the root of it, didn't really know who Maya was. And so that's a scary thing too, to try to figure out, what is it that I like? What is it that I want to do with my life? What truly makes me happy? Is it weird? You know, is it healthy? All these different questions that go with what, you know, who do you want to be? Even to the way I dress. It sounds like a simple thing, but I always loved sort of this bohemian, flowy look of clothes and
Me
style, but
too.
and I always wanted that so much.
Yeah.
And, you know, to wear my natural hair and all of those different things. And then, you know, I had this career where it was, you know, the anchor hair and the bob and the, you know, the business suits. And it kind of in a way suppressed that expression. So it might sound superficial in a way, but those are all parts of who we are. Our clothes represent who we are. Our style represents who we are. And so to not have that outlet or not even the means to be able to express something that small, or it was a lot. It was a tremendous weight. And eventually I just decided that I wanted to live authentically. I know that they said 2023's biggest word, the word of the year was authenticity. So I kind of laughed at that because that was something that kept coming up when I was writing the return trip, was an authentic portrayal, an authentic discussion about the roles of women, an authentic look at the repercussions of childhood abuse.
And it's really quite rampant. I think people don't realize, because it is hidden and people don't like to talk about it. And it's a subject that is super difficult to talk about. And I think that's part of the quashing of how prevalent this really is in our society. So that's another reason I'm so happy to have you on, because I think when people out there hear of a personal experience, it gives them hope in a certain way. But speaking of hope, I know that you went through, obviously, times of complete hopelessness, feeling like there was no way you were going to turn this around. And I know that there may be some people out there that are feeling that way now. What do you say to those folks that may be feeling a sense of hopelessness?
I know that it feels so dark, and I know it feels all consuming. And our minds can also trick ourselves into believing that that's permanent, that we're never going to feel good, that we don't deserve nice things, we don't deserve to be happy. Those intrusive thoughts become real to us, especially when you're in despair or have dealt with secrecy for so long. With the start of the return trip, it is the day of the suicide plan for me. And I know that people that pick the book up will realize, obviously, I didn't take my life that day. The reason is why. And
Yeah.
what happened was that willingness to work on myself, that willingness to try to separate from all the things that I felt were causing me despair. And I can truly say that it doesn't mean life on the other side is perfect,
Right.
but it's vibrant and it's beautiful and there are moments of joy. And I know that it can feel, again, like those things are, we're so deep in the murkiness of it and that darkness that we don't see the light. But if you can hold on and you can reach out to a trusted source, maybe you feel like you don't have family or friends to reach out to, but there are so many national resources. I will always tout RAINN as one of the great organizations, and they have even a chat function where when I was feeling at my lowest, I could go online and chat and talk with someone that would guide me through those thoughts and help me through. And I would hold on a little bit longer. And if you can start to hold on for 15 minutes and then challenge yourself to hold on for an hour, then it becomes a
Small
day.
goals,
Small
small
goal.
goals at that point when you're in that much despair, right?
Yes. And I can truly say that if you reach out to someone to get help, because when you've reached that breaking point or you've reached rock bottom, you cannot see straight. The people that I've worked with, the people that I've talked with and had those discussions with, we all have that moment of rock bottom where it's eye-opening. And some people fall, unfortunately, prey to it. And then some people do reach out. I would encourage to reach out, seek some help. Again, if you don't feel like you have someone in your life that you can trust, to find one of these resources online and talk to someone. But hang on. And I know it's almost a cliche that they say tough times don't last. And it's not about being a tough person. I don't like that part of that saying, tough times don't last, tough people do. It's not about your personal strength. It is about the ability to build yourself back up, not from being tough, but from the fact that your life is not meant to be unhappy. And again, when you're in that moment, it's hard to see that. But if you can hang on, get some help, talk to someone, talk to a professional at that. Sometimes our family and our friends have the best of intentions, but they aren't trained professionals that know how to give
That's
you
right.
care. And if you can talk to someone who is a professional in that regard, there are plenty of resources in communities and nationally. On the other side of that, as you begin to work, as you begin to embrace that authenticity, you start to feel better. And what felt hopeless begins to be filled with hope. I can get better. I know that I can feel better. I know that life can have joy. I can laugh again. I can be present again. And it's just a matter, again, of believing enough in yourself, loving yourself enough. And I know that's hard, especially coming from me. I know that that's hard, but you owe it to yourself to at least try.
Is part of it, Maya, the gaining control back? Because as a child, children, no matter what the situation is, they feel that they're not in control, right? They can't just run away and go somewhere else, particularly when abuse is coming from family members or people that they know. There's a complete lack of feeling like they have any sort of control over what's happening to them. So, was part of your journey toward healing that feeling that you finally had control over your thoughts, your feelings, your goals, your wishes at that point when you turn the corner?
It was basically relearning that. It was learning, as you said, when you have childhood trauma, especially, or you've grown up in situations or dynamics where you feel, again, your decisions aren't your own. Maybe you're a people pleaser, which is a natural response to trauma. You don't make any waves, then things will be good. The same with abusive relationships. You might have a domestic partner the same thing. You try to control the situation as much as you can by doing what you think are good things. When you live your life that way and you're walking on eggshells all the time, you're not in control. And one of the things that you can do when working with a therapist, when working with counseling services, finding community, group support is realizing what you do have control over. And those are really and I don't like to even say sometimes your reactions and your responses, because how you react to other people is also a learned behavior.
Yes.
And you have to relearn that. And that was part of my journey, was relearning what I would allow to make me angry, what I would allow to sap my energy, what I would give my energy to. And also understanding too that I had to let go of this illusion that they try to sell us about balance, that, you can be the mom, you can be the worker, you can, and you can divide yourself equally amongst those things. That's not realistic.
No.
And one thing that helps me tremendously was understanding that and giving myself permission slips, the personal permission slips for myself to say, it's okay if the only thing I did today was get my kid to school, get him breakfast, have clean clothes, and make sure that he got home to a good dinner. If that's all that I had the energy for, that's okay.
I'm so
Uh,
glad you said that. I think women in general, I know I keep talking about women, women. I know some men feel this way too, but I just think, we beat ourselves up a lot about not being perfect and not doing everything. I think that is something that was sold to us at one point. But I mean, nobody can do everything perfect, right? Some days you can only give 30% to your career, and other days, you can give more. And you're right. You have to pat yourself on the back that you got through the day as best as you can and that you're handling things as best as you can, because that's all anybody can do. But in
right.
your situation, it was just, 20-fold what you were dealing with. But I want listeners to know that we want to uplift you through this show as well, because you see Maya here. She's here with us, thank God. She's doing well. She's helping others in a big way. And so I think this is a good segue into talking into your foundation, the 1 in 3 Foundation. I want to hear a little bit about the inspiration behind starting that. I mean, I can have my guesses, but I want to hear it from you. And then also maybe some of the resources and services you give other women who are struggling.
Well, one very pivotal thing for me was, again, I mentioned earlier that I had gone through cognitive therapy, talk therapy, going to a counselor and sitting on a counselor's sofa in their office for years. And I will never downplay that, because it is still immensely helpful. I still have weekly appointments for therapy even now. But what I learned was, and there's a book that's a very popular book. It's called The Body Keeps Score. And it's about how our bodies lock on to the trauma. And when it's part of our developmental years, especially our childhood, and our core beliefs are centered around that, it's so prevalent in our society, but it's not talked about. And it was when I went to the Shades of Hope treatment facility and really worked through some body-based healing techniques that went, talking was part of it, but there was also some ways to unlock it from within the body. And when I was there, I started to realize it was such an amazing resource that I wanted to provide to other survivors. And I knew of very few facilities, very few agencies that offered that at the time. So when I came back to East Texas and was released from treatment, I had experience working with nonprofits, but I wanted to start the 1 in 3 Foundation to offer those body-based healing services along with cognitive therapy and support groups, because I feel that community is also very important in healing. But the name, the 1 in 3 Foundation, that 1 in 3 statistic is drawn from the World Health Organization, that 1 in 3 women in their lifetime will experience physical or sexual violence. And that statistic was so staggering to me because growing up, I felt like I was the only one who went through it. And I think a lot of us feel that way. We see information about it, or we go through school assemblies, but nobody is standing up to say this happened to me, because there's so many stigmas around it. And when I knew that that was the statistic of reported cases, that's not even just the ones
I
who
was
choose
going to
to.
say that, Maya. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
even probably higher than that. People are terrified to say things out loud about it. Um,
right. Uh, once it was Once I knew that, and I knew that it had unlocked so much for me, it became important to offer that in the community where I lived. I also knew that I had been fortunate to have a support system that provided the resources to be able to pay for that kind of treatment, because insurance did not. And I could do a
Me
whole
too.
podcast raging
Our
about.
community, Maya, is very big on alternative therapies. Not to say that that's the only way to go, but treating the whole person, and that a lot of these other types of therapies, including cognitive therapy and, seeing a medical doctor with whatever's going on with you, that holistic health and treating the whole person and finding the right modalities that might work for you is so important. And you physically had to be hurting from this. Stress and anxiety is a killer.
It really is. And
So
I
for survivors, I mean, the normal stresses in life are killers. So I'm so glad that you sought that out and you found that to help you. So this is a lot of what you're doing with your foundation now. You're offering these different pathways
We
for
do.
folks.
For me, you mentioned the physical pain aspect of it. For me, I had chronic colds, bronchitis, because of the stress on my body. I started to have panic attacks that I had to see a cardiologist for, because they were making sure that my heart was okay. My heart was fine.
Oh,
It was
yes.
the PTSD, the post-traumatic stress
Mhm.
disorder. And once I realized that, again, you have to treat the whole body, insurance is not always going to cover a lot of
I
those
know.
treatments. We as an organization began to offer that with trauma specialists, licensed care providers, and we do it at a reduced cost or no cost, depending on the person's income level. So if they
It's
don't have the
wonderful.
means, especially in situations where someone's leaving an abusive partnership as well, they might not have the finances or access to finances to be able to pay to go see a therapist. So our organization offers, we have a PTSD support group that meets every week. Again, I believe community is so important because we tend to isolate or feel like we're on an island. And even though somebody's experience isn't exactly the same, the symptoms of it, the repercussions of it, the way it impacts our relationships, professional and personal, there's so many similarities between it. And so when you can talk to someone and just see them nodding with understanding, that's important. And that PTSD support group is led by a licensed clinical social worker. We do offer the counseling sessions at no cost to our clients. And sometimes in those counseling sessions, they do things like EMDR, eye movement desensitization, reprocessing, and then we do trauma release exercises. We've done trauma informed yoga. all of these different things to bring us back to center and calming. Even if you only feel that calm for that 1 hour that you're in our care, then that's 1 hour more than you would have had
That's
during the
right.
course of the day. And your body can start to regulate that and crave that and say, you know what, that thing that we did earlier, I want more of that. And it works not just for people who are survivors of trauma or who have experienced severe childhood pain. I think in this day and age, we all need it. There are just so
Yeah,
many stressors. We just came out of a pandemic that had no clear end in sight. Just the state of the world and the news cycle and the things that we see. I think it's important for us to have that time to just breathe and move and do it in a way that doesn't feel like, for me, I'm an adrenaline junkie, so I like strength training and I like slamming the weight balls and doing all those things. That's a great release for me. But sometimes I have to make sure that I'm being true to myself and just say, it's okay if you breathe today, or just go for a walk and you don't have to run while you're,
absolutely.
yeah,
We've
just
actually, I
move.
had somebody on that did breath work with the audience, which is really nice. And Dr. Bobson, her name is, and I've been using that and working with that a lot because I do experience panic attacks out of nowhere. I don't even know what's going on, but the breath work, or, laying on the floor with your feet up against the wall and just closing your eyes and breathing to calm your heart rate, things like that. It's incredible how some of those things work. So that brings me into the next question I was going to ask you, which is, through your personal experiences and your work through the foundation, you mentioned a few things, but are there any particular things that you think help women along in this healing journey that you've seen has been helpful to like a lot of people, I guess?
I think for me, one of the biggest things for me, and maybe it does have stem from being a people pleaser. So I've kind of flipped it on its head for myself, but affirmations work extremely well for me. I have some self-care, self-love affirmations. And on days that are extremely difficult or the morning is chaotic, especially with a child and trying to get them to school and just fighting traffic, if I can take 6 to 10 minutes to listen to that meditation and say, I love myself no matter what. And even if I don't feel it that day, saying it out loud twice and then saying other things, I'm proud of myself. It makes me reflect to say, to look where I've come from the book, being suicidal to now having an organization that tries to help other women and support them through their healing journey. I don't think I often take a minute. And I think that's a lot of people in general, not just women. I think we don't give ourselves the time to stop and say, I'm proud of myself. And as I said
That's
earlier, if
right.
if all you did was brush your teeth that day, or put the dishes in the dishwasher, that's something to be proud of, because sometimes
Right.
that's all the capacity that you have, and that's okay. Give yourself those permission slips. If you have to physically write it down on a sheet of paper and slap a post-it on your mirror that says, I give myself permission to rest today. Sometimes we need that. Those, like I said, the quality in me, that personality trait to please and still try to be a high achiever, is very strong. So I
Yeah.
struggle many days with saying, you know what, I chose to rest today, but I could have been doing. There's always going to be a list. There's always going to be that list. What I've noticed is I'm able to complete those tasks when I've allowed myself rest. I'm able to not,
Yes, that's right. I'm so glad you mentioned that.
yeah, I'm able to
That's
not
so true.
I'm able to not have resentment for having to do those tasks when I've allowed myself to rest.
That's right.
And I hate going to the grocery store. I hate grocery shopping, but it's a necessary thing.
That's right.
But
Laundry
I
and all those things. Well,
all
some
those
people
things.
like the laundry, they meditate when they fold. I don't know. I don't particularly like laundry, or grocery shopping for that matter, but there's that.
Well,
Um,
if you
Go
can
ahead.
give yourself a little bit of grace before having to do those things, or rest before that, then it becomes less of a I have to. And on the other side of it, yay, I did do it. I do have the
Yeah,
groceries. I do have the laundry done. I feel good that I did that now.
that's right. Well, I would love it if you could read for us from your book. It's amazing. It's been getting really good reviews, by the way, folks, The Return Trip. And Maya, I just wanted to mention to listeners as well that we will have Maya's website up, but also the website for the 1 in 3 Foundation so that you can go and get more information there. But we'd love to hear from you directly from your book if you could do that for us.
Thank you. This is, I chose to read a different excerpt. I'm going to read, I've gotten a lot of questions from people who feel a bit daunted about seeking help, especially
Okay.
if it involves going to treatment. No one felt more scared of that and terrified to do that than me. And so this
Okay.
was my initial reaction to entering treatment. And this
Okay.
is from the chapter Shades of Hope. Nothing is as I expected. I Googled some pictures of the place, but thought the manicured lawns and homey buildings were for curb appeal, like the glossy brochure for a resort that is actually only 2 stars. I was convinced buildings in the photos were nothing more than fronts, a literal front, and I was really going to be trapped inside some room with any sharp objects, blunt edges, and with bars over the windows. But when the white van stops in the gravel driveway, what is in front of me reminds me of my grandparents' home. There is a wooden sign in the front yard outside a white picket fence that says Shades of Hope Treatment Center. A Jeep and a small silver Airstream RV are parked next to the house. As I, No Name, and Juana climb out of the van, the door to the Jeep opens. A 30-something blonde with a short bob steps out in jeans, a t-shirt, and sandals. Her shades are pushed up into her light hair like a headband. As my shoes shuffle over the gravel, she offers a warm smile. She shuts the door to the Jeep, not bothering to lock it. We leave our baggage in the van. There are other houses and other buildings, all of which are part of the treatment center. The treatment center sits in a neighborhood where the neighbors become cohabitants of the wayward souls that drift in and out and sometimes back again to these Shades of Hope buildings. The light spring breeze lifts our hair, and the rustling leaves draw my attention to the grove of oaks and Texas ash trees throughout this neighborhood. Where the boughs and branches of one tree end, another begins, creating an arc of shadows and peace along the clay roads. We are canvassed in this protective shade, a shield over the three of us as we follow Juana up the creaky wooden slats of the stairs to the long porch. There are white rocking chairs spread across it, the wood dipping and crying a bit under our feet as Juana unlocks the front door and lets us all inside. The dank smell of the room has the scent of hundreds of home-cooked meals and old books in the wood paneling. The space is clean and furnished with plush leather sofas and throw pillows that welcome some of us to a place that feels like home we never had. A closed-off fireplace sits beneath a mantel decorated with knickknacks. The walls display scenic paintings of the Wild West and Big Bend National Park, where those ridges mark its entrance.
How beautifully written. What
Thank
a
you.
beautiful visual that gives us. Thank you for that. Thank you for
Thank you.
that. You're a terrific writer, really.
Thank
Go out and get Maya's book. Maya, is there anything that we didn't talk about today that you'd like to tell our listeners, or perhaps some future plans or projects you have in mind, either personally for the foundation or anything like that that you'd like to share?
There is quite a bit going on professionally with the foundation. We've partnered with an Austin filmmaker and producer to release a short film. It's about sexual assault awareness,
Wow.
and we'll be doing a screening of that in May. It's called Princess Short Film. We're excited to do that because that's a community awareness activity. We're going to have conversations around that film, but also I
Will that
feel
be,
that
I'm sorry, Maya, will that be online? Can people who aren't in your area see that at some point, or is it just going to strictly be local community?
I will have to confirm with the producers if it will be available online.
Please let us know because we'll share it in Sanctuary for you.
Perfect, thank you. And we feel that visual arts as a medium, but especially film, can be such a powerful tool in
Mhm.
starting conversations. And so we're excited to partner with them on that. Also, career-wise, I do have my first fiction book coming out in April of 2025. It's a political thriller. It's called The Senator. It's a bit different for me. I'm excited to write fiction, but I am not stepping away from nonfiction. I actually have another book in the works that is I Am an Autism Mom, and it's about navigating being the mother of a child on the spectrum and also having complex PTSD and how we've basically navigated our mental health and being neurodivergent together.
Oh,
And
that's
that'll be the focus of
wonderful.
my next book. Yes.
Oh, that's wonderful. Just so you know, and our listeners I know, every April we publish an autism awareness issue. So thank you
Perfect.
for that.
Thank you. Thank you for
You're a
that
busy
awareness.
lady, Maya.
I am, but I do find time. I am taking time to rest. But
Oh,
yes,
good. I'm so glad. And we are happy to have you again with some of these future projects or doing another excerpt. I just, I feel joyful that you've come out the other side and you've had success and you're feeling good and you're raising your kids and you've taken control. And I hope that we leave that sort of uplifting message to our listeners here. But thank you so much for joining me today. It's truly been a pleasure having you on the show.
thank you so much for the opportunity. I enjoyed being able to speak with you.
I did too. Thank you. I'll close as I always do by wishing all of our listeners and our readers good health, happiness, and continued inspiration. Thank you so much for joining us today.